Hey everyone, welcome back to TK's Tech Talk. Today we're going to be doing a PC build using the Intel Core i9-12900K and a B660M plus D4 micro ATX motherboard from Asus. So let's go over all of the parts I'm using and then let's get straight into the build. So I've got here an NR400 mATX case from Coolermaster, and this is the one that features an optical disk drive. You can get it without it, or you can just remove the bay if you need that space inside the case. For the fans for the case, I've removed the original fans that came with it, which were two 100mm 20mm fans, and I've gone with two SickleFlow ARGB 120 fans as exhaust for top and back, and then at the front we're going to have two 140mm Corsair fans, which unfortunately I couldn't find the 140 at the time for the 140 SickleFlow, so we'll put that in later on, but for now we can just change the colors to blue once we're done. So I have a 750 watt power supply to power the RTX 2060 and the i9-12900K, which will be more than sufficient for this. I've got another video where I'm using the 750 watt, doing a test with it on the 13900K, and we're running with an RTX 3090, so feel free to check that out if you want to know more about this power supply. To cool the CPU, we're going to go again with the AK620 as I originally did in the previous build. So for the RAM, we're using 32 gigabytes of HyperX Fury, which is 2x16 gig sticks running at 3200 megahertz. This RAM is no longer sold, it's now Fury Beast, I believe. And for the SSD, we've got a 1 terabyte PCIe 4 Crucial P5 Plus. Okay, so let's start this build. I'm going to get the motherboard and CPU out of the box first, and let's get started. Okay, so I've got the motherboard out of the packaging. I've got another video for the unboxing of this motherboard where I talk about all the features of the board. So if you want to know more about the board, please feel free to check that out. I'm trying not to make this video too long. So first we're going to unclip the CPU bracket using this lever. Open it up, leaving the plastic in place like I did not do last time, if some of you remember, if you've seen that video, which is not a big deal, but it's okay. And here we can see the triangle marking just about on the CPU. Hope you can see that. And we're going to line it up with the triangle on the motherboard. Also, if you can't see the triangle, there's actually two notches at the top and two notches at the bottom, which have to line up for the CPU to be in correctly. And you can see I'm trying to move around, it's not moving there. So just zoom in a little bit and show that to you. And we're just going to put the top lever down. Push down. Oh, that flew off, so I might as well remove that now. And then you'll see slowly as we pull the lever down, the CPU will go into place. I think the next logical thing to do now, let's install the CPU cooler and then we'll put in the RAM. Okay, so I've got the cooler and all of the mounting equipment required to get this cooler in place. So first thing we need to do is get the bracket. So this is the EVGA 1700 bracket. Make sure that you have been given this bracket. If not, you can request it from Deepcool. I got mine sent to me for free. And here you can see there's some pins and they do require adjusting. So if you see, they do move around. So that's on the inside position and that's now on the outside position. For the EVGA 1700, they all need to be on the outside so that they line up with the corresponding holes on the motherboard. Right there, 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 and there. So let's turn the motherboard around. And let's line up these holes. And that's in. Turn that around. Try and keep it on there. There we go. And then we have these screws, which we require to hold down this bracket. So we screw this all the way down slowly. So let me screw all of these in. Okay, didn't want to bore you with that, but all of the screws are enough tight, and then as far as they can go, I think they're all tight except this one slightly. I haven't used any tools or anything. I wouldn't recommend doing that either. Just go as far as you can until they are tightened just by hand. You don't want to go any more than that, right? So once that's done, you're gonna need these plates. I actually forgot to put them on the table before, and you can see they're numbered, and we're going to use the notch number 2 to line these up on here. So let's put those down. They will look about right, yeah. So let me just show that to you from above if I can. There we go, you can see that they're all on the number 2s. And before screwing it down, just gonna check, we've put them the wrong way around. You see, we're not gonna install it like that. So we'd line up these with the screw holes. So I'm gonna turn these two around. And it's always good to check this before you tighten it down, otherwise you waste a lot of time and effort. And that should now be the way you want it. And because they're the same size, there we go, it still fits perfectly fine. And now we should have the mounting in the right way. There we go. Right, okay, so now let me screw these down. So there's 4 screws like this, which we now require to tighten these down. So again, tighten them down. And once they're all tightened, they should look something like this. And I have tightened them only by hand so far. We can now take a screwdriver, which they have actually provided, and try and tighten them maybe just a little bit more. See if that works. Yeah, there's not really much play. I think they don't really go past that space anyway, so don't tighten them too much, and they're already tight. Okay, so now let's apply some thermal paste. I'm going to be using Arctic MX4, and I'm just going to apply a little bit down the middle. I've tried so many different variations of this over my testing with the 12900K and the 13900K and AK620 and 2 different Arctic liquid coolers, and the paste application didn't actually make that much difference. And the reason is because of this bad contact between the 12th gen CPUs and most coolers. Okay, after the masterpiece that I've created here, let's put the CPU cooler on. So I've got my cooler here, I've got my cables out on the right side, and I'm just going to rest this on top. Make sure we are lining up the holes at the top, and that is now resting correctly in place. And one thing I forgot to do was remove this fan, because we won't be able to access the screw hole, so we'll just quickly do that now. Okay, so with the fan removed, we're going to turn this slowly, a couple of turns at a time, a couple of turns on this side, maybe that's better there, you can see that better, and then a couple of turns on this side, and we're just going to keep going until we've done it all the way down. Right, so as I'm putting this fan back in, I just realized something. As I'm putting the fan back in, I realized if I put this fan back in, may not have access to that screw for the SSD heatsink. So let's remove this, and I've made the same mistake with the RAM. So let's remove both of the fans, and let's get the RAM and the SSD in. Thankfully this cooler has enough clearance so we can easily fix this problem. So let's get our RAM DIMMs installed first. So if we were to use one DIMM, we should always use the one that's furthest away from the CPU, which is that one there, or known as B2 on this motherboard. So the first one, because we're going to be using 2, we're going to occupy the 2 grey slots. So we would occupy this one and the other one, and the other grey slot as well. Oops. Supposed to get this side in first. It's a bit hard to see what I'm doing now because the heatsink's in the way. There we go, one in. And the other one in. Okay, so let's now remove that M.2 cover. Luckily, we still have enough clearance to access that screw, otherwise that would have been a big mistake. Okay, the screws off. Looks like these screws do stay inside, so that's nice. Got a thermal pad there. Okay, so I've got the Crucial P5 Plus here, which we're now going to put inside. And I believe it goes in like this. Clip and down. It seems to have this toolless mechanism. Yeah, there we go. It's down and it's in. We just turn that and it's locked in. So you can see it better this way. So just turning that there. And it's in. I just realized it wasn't in the first time. Okay, so now we'll remove this plastic film from the thermal pad. There we go. Finally in. Screw that back in. So with the RAM and SSD back in place, we can put our fans back in. Literally slide them down. and clip them on. So as you see here, it's probably better to install the RAM and the SSD first, otherwise you may have to end up removing your cooler. Okay, so I've just turned this around so that you can see what I'm trying to do here. We've got CPU fan and CPU fan optional. Now you can connect these together with the splitter that they actually came with, but I'm going to run it separately just to keep the cables clean, and I'm not going to be using the optional anyway for anything else. So it's just a way for me to keep this clean. So let's plug both of those in. That's one. And that is, where's the other one again? 2. Okay, so our build is looking pretty good so far. Let me get the case and let's get this motherboard inside the case. Okay, so before we put the motherboard in, I think let's get the power supply into the case. And because this is a semi-modular power supply, we want to make sure that we attach the required cables for the motherboard. So the motherboard has 8 pin plus 4 pin in our case, and for the standard semi-modular power supply in this case only has one CPU 8 pin connector, so we're going to need to add another one. So we're going to connect this onto CPU 2, as you can see here on the power supply, and this is CPU as well. So we're going to put that in first. Okay, and we are going to install this power supply into the case down there with the fan blowing air out of the case at the bottom. So we should be able to get this in without removing the hard drive case that is present here in the NR400. Let's see if we can do that. I think it should be okay. There we go. Minimal effort required. Turn this around. See how that looks. Looks fine. Let's line up all of the holes. Looks lined up. And we should be able to see that, and let's just get the screws in, starting here. Right, all the screws are in, so let's now move on to the motherboard. Okay, so I'm not sure how clearly you can see this, but this already has the standoffs applied for the mATX motherboards, which usually have standard positions for all of these pins, right? So let me put this on the side and let's get the board inside. Okay, so this is not the best of angles, but I think it's the easiest way for me to show you how the motherboard goes into the case. So let's try it. So here comes the motherboard. We've got the back plate, the rear I/O panel going towards the back, of course, and we're gonna make sure that all of the holes line up. And it's a bit easier when you have a back plate because it makes it a lot easier to install the motherboard. So let's just check that. How does that look? Are all the screws lined up? Yep, just about. So I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it's definitely inside the case. Let me try and zoom in to show you the standoffs. There we go, but they're definitely in line. Okay, I'm not going to bore you with putting the screws into the motherboard, but let me do that and we'll continue. So all the motherboard screws are in now. We're going to install our graphics card in that silver PCIe slot there. We need to remove 2 of these screws because we have a 2-slot graphics card. Just making sure we're removing the right 2. I believe it's going to be the top 2 in our case. So let's remove these 2 panels and then get our graphics card in. Okay, you can see here now those 2 covers have been removed, and we're going to get our graphics card, which was the MSI Ventus RTX 2060 12GB. We're going to line it up with the PCI slot inside the case and make sure that these line up properly. It's really always a little bit fiddly because there's always different clearance in different cases, and it can be difficult. That clipped a bit hard, but there we go, it's in. Let's have a quick look inside like that. There we go. All seated down correctly, pushed in properly. Let me screw that in and then we'll connect all the power cables. Okay, so from the back of the case, we're just routing all of the power cables through. So I've got the 2 8-pin CPU connectors going from here, from the top, because it's the closest route, and there's a nice hole right above the power connectors there. So that's gone in there. The 24-pin can just go through this rubber grommet on the side here, and that will be more or less lined up on the motherboard as well, roughly, so we can keep those cables looking as neat as possible. And then the GPU connector, I think there's a hole right at the front here. There is, so let's try and use that hole. There are some pins at the bottom, there's a gap at the bottom, but the motherboard pins do get in the way there, so I think this is the neatest way to go for now. So that's all through, and obviously we should try and put the front panel I/O for at least for the power switch, which is, I believe, that one, and we're going to put that one through the bottom hole here, so it has easy access and looks neat. Okay, that's fine for now. We'll worry about the audio and other things later on. So let me turn that case around and get these power cables connected. Okay, so I'm not sure how well you can see this, but starting with the 8-pin connector right there. I've got the 4-pin connector next to it already. You can see one of the pins is hanging loose, so we're just going to connect the other 8-pin connector right now. And it's in. Okay, I think it's easier to see the 24-pin connector right there. So I've got the cable here, it's a 20 plus 4-pin. We've got the clip on the outside, as the clip is on the outside on the motherboard. We're just going to line up the holes as such. I'm not sure if you can see with my hand in the way, but I'm just lining it up and pushing it in, and you hear a clip, and we're in. Okay, so let's move on to the GPU. We've got the power connector there. I've got my 8-pin power connector here. There's an 8 plus 6, so we want to make sure we use the 8-pin, but there's also a 6 plus 2, so make sure you put them next to each other as required, like that. And then make sure the clip is the same direction. So this is the orientation of my graphics card, and I'm going to place this into the pin out and push it in. And that's in. So I'm just going to move that to the side there so it's out of the way. So it looks like all of our power cables are now connected. Okay, so I couldn't really show you on the camera, but I plugged in the power switch, which goes on the front header on the motherboard right there. I don't know if you can see that. And I've also plugged in the USB 3 header for the front USB 3 ports. So technically we're finished now. Computer is completely built and ready to be powered on. But I'm just going to put the case fans in. We're going to put one exhaust here, one exhaust at the top up there, and 2 fans at the front. Okay, so let's start with the front fans first. So we have the Corsair 140mm fans. Now we can actually mount them on the front like this, or we can mount them inside. I'm going to mount them inside this time, because I noticed last time when I mounted them at the front, when these fans are at full RPM, it does make some noise. I'm not sure if it's because of the air coming through the fan grill, but we'll try it like this time, but it doesn't really matter. It's up to you. You can try whichever way works best for your case. So let me just grab the screws and let's start putting this one in. So we're going to put one at the bottom here. I think I'll line them up first, make sure nothing's in the way. And the other one will go somewhere here. So once we have them in, we can move them around slowly and just position them wherever we'd like them to be. Maybe we can have it, of course we have to pay attention to the grill as well. So here we're limited to starting at this point here. So let's put one screw in here for now. Let's just put it at the lowest point. And let me get these screwed in and we see how they look. Okay, so both the fans are screwed in, and one thing I forgot to mention was try to make sure that you look at which side your cables are going on. So I've had mine come both from this side here, because I'm going to have them go underneath, back inside the case and up to the chassis fan header, because in this motherboard I think all of them are lined up along the bottom here. So obviously I want to try and keep it as clean as possible, so by bringing it up from underneath, from inside, it will keep it as clean as possible. So I'm going to connect all those fans. I'm going to connect the 2 fans to the fan headers on the bottom, and then let's do the top ones. Okay, so we're moving on to the exhaust fans, the 120mm fan, which we're going to put here and here. And these fans are a bit different. The one we put at the front, they were just 3-pin fans, direct voltage fans, so we can control them via voltage. And the LED is just blue, it always stays blue. With these ones, we have an addressable RGB connector, and you can daisy chain them as well. And then you also have a 4-pin PWM fan header, as opposed to the standard 3-pin on that one. So we're going to put this fan here. So let me get this screwed in, and probably around there. And then we do one here as well. So I'll screw both of them in and then we'll connect them up. Okay, so there you go. We've got the back exhaust, the top exhaust. Make sure your fans are blowing in the right direction. So it always goes from the label going out. So this one is going out this way, this one is going out this way. Let me turn the case around and show you what I've done with the wires. They're a mess at the moment, but just to give you an idea of how I had to manage to get them in. Okay, so up here, this is the ARGB connector. We've got them daisy chained and going back into one of the top addressable ARGB connectors there to make minimal mess. Just had to go back inside. And then we have the back and the top exhaust connected together using that header we gained from the Deepcool AK620 splitter, and then going from underneath back into the motherboard connector. And then we have the two fans, the 140 from the top and the bottom at the front over here, and those wires are coming here also going underneath to try and minimize the cable mess there. I think you can see that. So these are the two cables, they're also going through there. So we're done. Let me get the panels back on and let's try and turn this on. Okay, so everything is connected, and once I switched on the power supply, I noticed that the RGB light is already there. So we're going to do the next bit together. Let's press the power button. We seem to have power. All the fans are on. And do we get a signal? Okay, we saw something flash on the motherboard there. And we're in. Excellent. So now it says, let's just go over here so we can see what's going on. It's talking about new CPU installed, i9-12900K, P5 SSD is there, and where's the RAM? 32 gigs of RAM, which is running at 2133 at the moment. I don't have a keyboard here, so I'd have to go in and fix this all up. But there we go, the build is complete. And we've got some nice light show going on inside the case. So once all of it is done, I'll make everything blue for now until we can sort something out with those front fans. So that's it for this video. I hope this was useful. If you have any questions about this build, or if you're doing your own build and you want some help, feel free to answer questions in the comment section below. Please feel free to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.